Yesterday we ended the class, or we began to close, looking at how the scriptures predicted the inception of this dark, purified, and when I say dark, I mean hidden, but I'm using that
Mm-hmm.
to related to melanin, related to dark energy and dark.
Right.
The scriptures predict the inception of a dark, purified, compressed, condensed, holistic new language. And I'm using all that word. It might sound wordy, but it fits. The scriptures predict the inception of a dark, purified, compressed, condensed, holistic new language. Now, this connects us to the sigils, which do exactly that. It compresses language into a dark, hidden,
Mm-hmm.
purified, condensed, holistic new form. So
Mm-hmm.
it encapsulates language, this abundance of language, into a form that darkens it. In other words, it puts it, Nasik, in an unrecognizable form to
Right. Right. Right.
our
Right. Right.
conscious intellect, to the ego,
Mm-hmm.
and puts it in a form that goes directly to the id, the subconscious, that inner darkness, that divinity that is within us. And
Mm-hmm.
the ancestors just reminded me to show everyone that that is where that is where divinity hides, all right, or conceals itself in the thick darkness, all right, in that thick inner darkness. This is good.
And that ties you right back to Moses and going up to the mountain in thick darkness.
Yes, yes.
In Exodus 20th chapter, right?
There
And
you
when
go.
it no no one wanted to hear the voice,
That's
if you
right.
know, right,
Right.
right.
Absolutely correct. And in Psalm 18, it talks directly to that. He made thick darkness, he made darkness his secret place. His
Mm-hmm.
pavilion round about him were dark waters and thick clouds of the sky, you know.
Right.
So, and he said in another place, that was Psalms 18, if anyone's taking notes, and 11. And Nasik was referring to Exodus, where the people, Exodus 21, where the people stood afar off, and Moses drew near
Hold on,
to
hold on,
the
hold on.
thick darkness where God was. The thick darkness where God was, and in other places, I believe in the Psalms, he says that he would that divinity dwells in thick darkness. Uh, 1 Kings 8 and 12. Then spake Solomon, the Lord said that he would dwell in thick darkness. Second Chronicles 6 and 1. The Lord hath said he would dwell in thick darkness. All right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this is very instructive to us that that is where that divinity resides within us, in the subconscious, referred to as the id. These are just other terms for the biblical symbolism that and metaphor that we just went over. That our divinity is
Mm-hmm.
hidden within us, and
Mm-hmm.
We have designated it over the years by different names, but it comes back to this darkness, whether you call it the id, whether you call it the subconscious, whatever. It is that hidden aspect, that dormant aspect, that which lies sleeping, the sleeping God. This is a very popular symbolism and allegorical technique, allegorical designation for divinity as being the sleeping God, the sleeping giant. All right.
Right.
the,
Right.
the,
Right.
the slumbering beast, whatever, that resides within us all. So, what we want to talk about today is this aspect. We want to begin here where the scriptures predict the inception of a dark, purified, compressed, condensed, holistic new language that would what? That would be able to communicate with the divinity that dwells in thick darkness within us all, and would have the ability, family, to arouse, to evoke, to awaken that divinity within you. Okay? So that is the symbolic language, and we're going to continue with that. Uh, Psalm 78, verses 1 through 3, the prediction of this dark, purified, compressed, condensed, holistic new language. Give ear, O people, to my law. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. In a parable, I will utter dark sayings of old, which have which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us. This is actually what we're focusing on. These dark sayings of old, these things, and I keep saying that we know them because we've heard them before. And we have that connection through that energetic connection, through our prophetic lineage, our prophetic ancestors. Our fathers
Mm-hmm.
told us these things. This is why now see the day that we can witness that these things are true, that they make sense, because we have
Mm-hmm.
that inner witness, that inner witness.
Right.
And again, that comes through the melanin. That comes through the melanin, that darkness that is within us. That is gives us the ability not only to understand these dark sayings of old, understand them, but also to speak them and to create this new language that is going to be necessary.
Right.
Proverbs 1 and 6, to understand a proverb. Now that is a parable as well. That is the same word. Parable and proverb is ultimately the same word. And the interpretation,
Mm-hmm.
the words of the wise and their dark sayings. Now you remember Yeshua talked to the people in parables. Talk to the general
Right.
people in this hidden,
Mm-hmm.
condensed, dark, purified, this holistic language. But they couldn't understand it. Now, see,
Right. Well, that's why they were saying that the disciples asked him, "Why do you speak to them in parable?"
absolutely,
You know. Right.
because they haven't
Right.
activated. They're trying to get this through their intellect, through their
Mm-hmm.
through their five sense knowledge. Through their intellectual knowledge, through the ego. All right. And he said, because in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah, seeing things they see not, hearing things they hear not. And with their heart, they can't understand. They can't understand these things. So, again, talking about and referring to this this holistic new language. So, what is our responsibility at this point? Really, to understand, to understand the nature of the false simulated matrix, the false simulated matrix. And we went over that a little bit yesterday, and we're going to use that again as a lead in. And we referred to Ecclesiastes, the portion of Ecclesiastes. I'm going to have to mute someone's mic. I'm getting a lot of feedback. In Ecclesiastes, it says, and we're all familiar with this, that there is nothing new under the sun, under the sun. And you all recall again that we had talked about the nature of the solar system, which is part of the not the organic reality, but the false simulated matrix. And we went on to prove that, but there is nothing new under the sun. And this we went over yesterday. And we understand that in order to transcend the simulated matrix or the solar system and to break out of this repetitive cycle, this enclosed repetitive feedback cycle, that we must forget the former things and make new things in the earth. In other words, we cannot continue to apply the same perception or use the same perceptive ability or to remain from the same perceptive perspective and to use the same thoughts that lock us into this false simulated matrix in order to get out of it. We have to forget those things and to make and form new things, new thoughts, take a new perceptive vantage point. So yesterday we went over Genesis 11, the Tower of Babel story, the building of the Tower of Babel, and indicated that that was an example from the past where a group of people, not all people, but a group of people were attempting to repeat and replicate the former things. We won't go back over that. We've done that thoroughly in detail. So they were attempting, by use of an old perception and an old language, to repeat and replicate former things and to hold their place, to remain in a holding pattern and to forestall the fall, the devolution process, the process of decomposition that would eventually purify a people. So they were moving from holistic and divine to dualistic, diverse, and human. All right. And this process, we said, was necessary, that we entered into that process voluntarily with knowledge of forethought when we emanated in. And again, we said the very nature of our initial emanation into the physical realms created the simulated matrix because we bypass the formative step, the first step in that emanation process on purpose, with knowledge of forethought. So again, Ecclesiastes asks the question, is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? It hath been already of old time, which was before. That's Ecclesiastes 1 and 10. Also, Ecclesiastes 1, and again, we're just reviewing the nature of the simulated matrix, and then we're going to go on and talk about how to transcend it. Ecclesiastes 1, all things are full of labor. We're going to deal with that. Man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. And now that is referring to, again, this aspect of having ears, can't see. I mean, having ears, can't hear, eyes can't see. The thing that hath been, it is that which shall be. Now that is referring to the repetitive or repetitious feedback loop aspect of the false simulated matrix or the solar system. And that which is done is that which shall be done. Again, nothing new. There is nothing new under the sun. That is the solar system. Hold on, I'm going to place this on pause. Somebody is out cutting their grass, and it might be interfering with what we're recording here. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to pause. Okay, that's much better. So we're going to deal with these two aspects. All things are full of labor, and that there is nothing new under the sun. That is the solar system. And we dealt with this, in previous classes, but, it's good, always good to circle back to these things and really just reinforce these as thoughts. The solar energy is constantly being drawn back unto itself. And we have that demonstrated here, where for every 1,000 units of light energy that a plant receives from the sun, it only retains 1% of that, or 10 units. And the other 990 units of energy is lost or returns back into the environment. So when an herbivore or a vegan or a vegetarian comes and eats the plant, it only of the 10 units of energy that the plant has, the herbivore, the vegan, the vegetarian only retains again 1%, or 1 unit of the 10. The other 9 are returned into the universe, so for into the environment, so forth and so on. So we noted on a number of occasions that this enclosed solar system, which was represented by the garden in the biblical narrative, the allegorical biblical narrative, that this enclosed solar system, represented by allegorically by the garden in the biblical narrative, by its very nature, locks humans into a highly competitive, imperfect, inefficient, repetitive, self-refueling, self-perpetuating cycle that features work, or avad, worship, as the highest expression and sole purpose of existence. And you can see why in the scriptures it says that there's nothing new under the sun, because everything, the very nature of that, the relationships within the solar system is repetitive. It just continues to repeat itself on every level. So this creates a necessity to exercise, again, control outside of that system. And that begins inwardly, with our thoughts, with a change of perception, with providing ourselves with new knowledge outside of the limited universe, which gets us into cosmic, um, the area of the cosmos, or the area of the etheric, into ether, extra dimensional knowledge. And again, we covered epigenetics and saw this same um, repetitious aspect of the feedback loop relative to DNA. And again, we made the conclusion that control must be exercised outside of the gene, outside of the DNA. New information must be put into the feeder loop. So when we look at this other aspect, all things are full of labor, that particular verse, we take a look at Genesis, the second chapter, the 15th verse, like we did yesterday. And it says actually several very important things contained in this verse. And the Lord took the man and put him in the garden. Now, again, the garden represents this locked or enclosed, repetitive, inefficient solar system. Solar system. So he took the man and put him into the Garden of Eden to do what? To work, to labor, to dress it, and to keep it. Now this says two very important things. The word dress, that's translated as dress, most of us are familiar with that, is the word avad or abad. Avad or abad. And it means to work. All things are full of labor within the simulated false matrix, within the garden, within the solar system. If you don't work, you can't live. So it has to do with work. It means to work, to serve. Now, when we get into serve, it begins to get into the mental aspect of this all, that which is really what we're focused on. To enslave, to be or to keep in bondage, to be kept in bondage, to be a bondman or a bondwoman, to be in bond service to a particular system, to a particular perception, through a particular thought process. All right. Again, to labor, to serve, to become a servant, to do service, to work, to be a worshiper. And we know that the entire system of programming, whether it be religious, spiritual, social, cultural, economic, whatever have you, it features work as the central theme. Work as the central theme and the underlying principle. I don't care what you call yourself, whether you call yourself a Hebrew, a Muslim, a Hindu, etc., and so on, you are a worshiper, and you are a servant, and you do service, and you attend service. Everything is designed from that particular template of labor, of work, of bondage. Even when you talk in terms of your obligation, LIG, that is a part, obligate is a part of relegate, which is a part of religion. Anytime that you perceive yourself to be a worshiper or a servant or to be doing service for something that is higher than you, then you are mentally locked into and mentally locked yourself into this false simulated matrix. And we have all been programmed to a certain degree to think and perceive ourselves as such. So again, work and the idea of labor locks us into the simulated matrix. And it locks us in holistically. Holistically. And this idea of replicating the thoughts and that were formulated, and the ideas and the concepts that were formulated within and by virtue of the simulated matrix of reality, those thoughts, again, keep you locked in to that reality, to that false reality. So something new must be added to the formula in order for us to transcend the simulated matrix or this solar system. The first step in that process, from a mental standpoint, the scriptures give us also. We must forget the former things in order to make new things in the earth. Proverbs 23:7 says, "For as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." We're all familiar with that. Now, remember, when we started this thing out, a very important concept that we took a look at was this number 7, this seventh letter, Zion, of the Hebrew alphabet, that it was related to, of course, the Feast of Weeks, Shavuot, and the rod, the Shevet, or the Shevet rather, or the Shebet, and the Shabbat. That this 7 is very important. There are also 7 hermetic principles. These are basic principles which represent to us the principles, the basic thought principles that underlie our ascension from the false simulated matrix. The first of the 7 basic principles of the Kabbalion that the Kabbalion give us is this statement: the all is mind, the universe is mental. The all is mind, the universe is mental. This principle embodies the truth that all, and I'll say, when I say all, I mean the all within the simulated matrix, is mind. It explains the all which is the substantial reality underlying all outward manifestations and appearances, which we know in terms of the material or physical universe, the phenomena of life, matter, energy, and in short, all that is apparent to our material senses is what's called spirit or is energetic, which in itself they say is unknowable and undefinable. But we're doing a great job at doing that, knowing it and defining it, but which may be considered and thought of as an universal, infinite living mind. This is how they put it. I put this here on purpose because I want us to understand the difference between how we think about this as enlightened beings, as individuals that are the firstborn and the first fruit, and how the rest of the world that thinks that they're spiritual think about this. They are mixing up this mind, and they are thinking that the universe constitutes the full infinite energetic range. It does not. We understand that it only refers, the universe only refers to one small portion of the full energetic range spectrum, energetic spectrum rather. So simply put, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Really emphasizing the mental aspect of all of this. This is going to be very important. Philippians, the 3rd chapter and the 13th verse says, Brethren, I count not myself to have apprehended, but this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forth unto the things which are before. Again, forgetting the former things and making new things in the earth. This is what we are focused on today. Isaiah 42, verses 8 through 10. I am the Lord, that is my name. My glory will I not give to another, neither my praise to graven images. Behold, the former things are come to pass, and new things do I declare. Before they spring forth, I tell you of them. So this is speaking of this ability that we have resident within ourselves to not only forget the things which have passed, but to declare, to speak by way of a new condensed holistic language, new things, to declare new things, to speak new things into existence. And even before they spring forth or are manifested in the physical, we have the ability to predict them, to call them forth. Sing unto the Lord a new song. That is this new language, family, that must be spoken inwardly, condensed inwardly to activate that divinity that what? Dwells within us all in the darkness, that is concealed, that is hidden, that is asleep, that is inactive. And his praise from the end of the earth. Ye that go down to the sea, and all that is therein, the isles and the inhabitants thereof. Isaiah 43. I know I'm giving you a lot of scriptures, but these are necessary. These are necessary. And it will prove this one fact that our ancient ancestors very carefully laid out this plan all throughout what we come to know as the Bible, Old and New Testament, as we'll see. Isaiah 43, verses 15 through 19. I am the Lord, your Holy One, the Creator of Israel, your King. Thus saith the Lord, which maketh a way in the sea and path in the mighty waters. Now, this is referring to directly to the parting of the Red Sea, the parting of the Red Sea. And that was accomplished by way of Aaron's rod that budded. All right? Aaron's rod that budded, his shevet, all right? Which bringeth forth the chariot and the horse. There you go. The army and the power. They shall lie down together. They shall not rise. They are extinct. They are quenched as tow. Now, that is talking about forgetting totally what had gone before in Egypt. What had gone before previously in Egypt. That was totally destroyed in the transition. And that is telling us the exact same thing. What has gone before. Don't go back to Egypt. Don't go back to Babylon. Don't go back to ancient Israel. Are you all with me? The former things are passed away. We have to create new things. Here we go. Remember ye not the former things, neither consider the things of old. Are y'all with me?
Okay.
We ain't
Do you have a visual going or not?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I do. I forgot to turn it on. Man, oh man. Okay, I'm sorry about that, family. I do have a visual going on, but I forgot to turn it on. Thanks for the reminder. Remember ye not the former things, neither consider the things of old. Behold, I will do a new thing. Do you all see the science? Do you see the science? Forgetting the former things. You can't build a tower. We had been tower builders. We had been known for that. We build them all over the earth. Genesis 11th chapter. And those individuals were trying to do what? Repeat and replicate old things. But a new thing was required in the fall. Can't hold on to those things. And likewise, in the ascension, you got to forget the replicating and repeating old things and create something new. This is exactly where we are. Now it shall spring forth. For shall ye not know it? I will even make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. So the wilderness is referring to the place where everything that you have a clean slate, you have a clean whiteboard or chalkboard, and you begin to create based on how you want to create. Create the world and the reality that you desire to inhabit and live in. It's your choice, but it begins with your perception and your thoughts. For as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So the first step in this process is forgetting. The first step in this process of creating a new reality to ascending is to forget what has come before. Revelation 21, again, moving from the Old to the New Covenant, the Old Testament to the New Testament. Revelations 21, verses 1 through 7. Revelations 21, verses 1 through 7. And I saw a new heaven and new earth. Are y'all with me? For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. Question: what caused the first heaven and the first earth to pass away? Think carefully now. Think carefully. What caused what is going to cause the first heaven and the first earth to pass away?
Just with regards to what you read earlier, as a man thinketh, so is he.
That's right.
So he's no longer thinking.
Right. Our forgetting it, our creating new thoughts and new perception. Simple as that. Excellent. Excellent. And I, John, saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. Now, this harkens back, family, to what we covered before, that Adam had no, there was no meat, there was no help that was meat for him. There was no counterpart for the masculine energy existing by itself in a vertically oriented reality, hierarchical reality. The bride would have to, the feminine aspect would have to come back into balance. Are you all with me? Everything must come back into balance. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is with man. This tabernacle again, this building, all right? This tower, this house, same metaphorical language. And he dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them and be their God. And God shall wipe away all the tears from their eyes. Why? Because this imperfect world that we created, that we suffered during that time, because everything was imperfect, because that's the way that it was made. And we had to go through this intense alchemical process. There shall be no more death, because we will have transcended the repetitive life-death cycle, the life-death cycle that is repeated incessantly within the solar system, within the false simulated matrix of reality. We might as well come to the realization that when we eat a plant, we kill it as well. That's the life-death struggle. That's the highly competitive nature of the simulated matrix. There shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain. Because we went through this painful alchemical process. That external fire that was designed and initiated to ignite an internal fire within us, to purify us, to decompose us, to reduce us in this alchemical process. It was painful. It was a very human experience. But at this time, the former things will have been passed away, because we will have killed it. We will have made it to pass away from a mental aspect, from the aspect of attaining a new perception. And he that sat upon the throne said, behold, I make all things new. And he said unto me, write, for these words are faithful and true. What was he writing with except for his rod, his shavet? All right. And he said unto me, it is done. I am Alpha and Omega. The Alpha and the Omega is not a person. The Alpha and the Omega is melanin, is dark energy, dark matter, the beginning and the end. That is melanin, dark energy, dark matter. It's the first and the last. I will give unto him that is athirst of the fountain of water, of the fountain of the water of life freely. Remember, melanin is always associated with water and always associated with the formation and maintenance and sustenance of life. These things are metaphoric. These things are allegorical, speaking of the life-giving aspect of melanin. He that overcometh shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son. Father and son, I and my Father are one. So, this rod, this shabet, this shabet, Sheva, Shiva, 7 is very, very, very important. And we referred to that early on, and we're going to come back to that. This 7th Hebrew letter, Zayin, symbolizes a sword. We're furthering our talk, family, and our discussion on this condensed new language, this purified, compressed, dark, condensed, holistic new language. And again, it's going to relate very directly to this 7th Hebrew letter, Zayin, which symbolizes a sword. It is also associated with the tongue, and the tongue is a sword, a two-edged sword, a double-edged sword. Again, this 7 is very important. These 7 energetic centers in the body that govern over the 7 principal organ systems of the body that begin with melanin throughout the formation of the innermost primary central nervous system and goes above to the largest organ of the human body, which is the skin, which is represented by the integumentary system. So melanin above, melanin below, the alpha and the omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. Our forefathers created, again, a law that would help us to not only perceive our bodies as a holistic, material, physical, and energetic system, but also these laws would help us to activate, fully activate all of these energetic, physical, interrelated, entangled systems, sevenfold systems of our body, the sevenfold spiritual body or etheric bodies, all right? Or auric bodies, I mean to say, the sevenfold auric bodies, the sevenfold consciousness levels. So these seven hermetic principles, and hermetic, when you understand Hermes and something that is hermetically sealed, it means that these principles are hidden, concealed, dark. All right. So they correspond with melanin, which is the alpha and the omega. The first of the seven hermetic principles, again, is the principle of mentalism. The all is mind and the universe is mental. This means the underlying reality of the universe is mind, and the universe itself is mental. That is existing in the mind of the all. So that is, we refer to that the our captivity and imprisonment within this simulated matrix of reality occurred mentally. The fall was mental. The fall was in terms of perception and thought. The rise out of that condition is going to be relative to that and related to perception and thought. Again, new perception and new thought. Let's explore this idea of this double-edged sword of the tongue, again, related to language. Isis was considered more powerful than 1,000 soldiers, and the clever-tongued one whose speech never fails. This is referring again to the primary energy, the feminine energy, being activated, and being brought back into its correct position. Proverbs 18:21 says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof." The fruit thereof is the manifestation of this divine language, this divine condensed language. It is powerful. It is powerful in its ability to create. It is powerful in its ability to defend and protect. It's powerful in its ability to punish. It's powerful in its ability, bear with me, because we want to get back to the rod, because it has all of these aspects. I'll find it. Here it is. It is used for punishing, so it's powerful in its ability to punish, powerful in its ability to write or create, powerful in defending and attacking, fighting, powerful in enabling us to rule, powerful enabling us to walk and to be non-fearful. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and powerful in its ability to replicate its power in terms of a branch or an offspring, a scion, to create in our own image. This is what it gives us the ability to do. This is what it gives us the ability to do, to create in our own image. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. And he hath made my mouth like a sharp sword. This is Isaiah 49:2. In the shadow of his hand hath he hid me. Now this is in the darkness, the shadow of his hand, the hand representing the creative aspect of man, the shadow of his hand, the hidden part, the hidden yud. Yud is symbolic of power, of creative power. The yud, the hand. He hath hid me. Yud referring to, again, yad, yada, knowledge, to know, that hidden wisdom, that hidden knowledge. He hath hid me. And hid is the word kava or kaba. Again, kava referring to what? The feminine aspect that has been hidden as well. So a double meaning in all of this, different layers of meaning. And hath made me a polished shaft. That is the rod, the shevet, the shevet. In his quiver hath he hid or concealed me. So that is referring to the hidden divine potential or aspect within us all, and the ability to speak things into existence, the ability to possess a new language. How should one chase 1,000 and two put 10,000 to flight? Remember, ISIS was considered more powerful than 1,000 soldiers. How should one chase 1,000 and two put 10,000 to flight? Except their rock had sold them, and the Lord had shut them up. We were shut up within this simulated matrix. Shut up in this simulated matrix. Again, for a reason. And this is the explanation. This one can chase 1,000 to flight, but two, 10,000 to flight. This is the secret doctrine. This is the hidden doctrine. The amalgamation and the reconnection of the divine masculine and of the divine feminine and the divine masculine. The divine masculine can only put 1,000 to flight standing alone, but coupled and reunited with the divine feminine, that ability, that power is increased exponentially by a factor of 10. All right? By a factor of 10. Now that goes back to the representation, and I said we would get back to it, of the magician, the two representations of the magician. The male having the rod in his hand, but the sword still on the table. The male with the feminine mask having the rod in his hand, but the sword on the table. However, the feminine aspect joined with the male, having both rods, possessing both the scepter and the sword. All right? So we have to keep that principle in mind, that energetic relationship in mind, because it's very important and it increases our power, our divine power, tenfold. One can put 1,000 to flight, two can put 10,000 to flight. That divine feminine is always primary to the complete manifestation of power, to the complete and utter manifestation of power. Leviticus 26, 7 and 8, and ye shall chase your enemies. This is after you've been activated. And they shall fall before you by the sword. Not talking about a physical weapon. It's talking about that sword, that two-edged sword of the tongue proceeding from the mouth. It's talking about that divine holistic language. And 5 of you shall chase 100, and 100 of you shall put 10,000 to flight, and your enemies shall fall before you by the sword. Revelations 19 and 15. And out of his mouth goeth a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron, and he treadeth the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of Almighty God. Referring to us, giving us a preview of our fully illuminated, fully activated state. Revelations 1 and 16. And he had in his right hand 7 stars. Again, this number 7. 7 stars. And out of his mouth went a sharp two-edged sword. The 7 stars referring to the 7 principal chakras. And his countenance was as the sun shineth in his strength. Fully illuminated. Fully illuminated. So let's talk about how these illuminated beings were referred to throughout history. And remember, as we look back, this was in the fall. This was in the fall. They were certainly at a higher state than we were energetically, certainly at a higher level energetically, certainly at a higher consciousness energetically, but yet in the fall, in the declination, in the devolution. All right? The son of the sun god Helios. Now again, these are all sun gods now. But we must understand even in the representation in the past, the sun that they were referring to was not the sun that we refer to. They were referring to the Sirius star. All right? The Sirius star, when they referred to in the past as the sun god, not the sun that we refer to. They were on a different energy source. Even than the inefficient one, the manifestly inefficient one that we refer to. When Phaeton, the shining one, finally learned who his father was, he went east to meet him. This is the sun god, or the son of the sun god, going east to meet him, traveling back from the west. Very important. He induced his father to allow him to drive the chariot of the sun across the heavens for one day. The horses, feeling their reins held by a weaker hand. Remember, the Father existed before the Son, right? And here we see the Son doing what? Going backwards, reverting to the former things. This is a recipe for disaster always. The horses, feeling the reins held by a weaker hand, he was in the fall, in the descent, ran wildly out of their course and came close to the earth, threatening to burn it. Zeus noticed the danger, and with a thunderbolt, he destroyed Phaeton. He fell down into the legendary river Erandus, where he was found by the river nymphs, who mourned him and buried him. Now, that is symbolic of our fall through emanation and incarnation. It is always through water, and water being a form of baptism into death. So Phaeton falls into the water and then is recovered by the river nymph and buried. The tears of the nymph turned into amber. For the Ethiopians, however, it was already too late. They were scorched by the heat, and their skins had turned black. That is the carbonated form of melanin, the carbonated form, rather, of dark energy, referred to as melanin. Their skins had turned black. The earlier myth, Phaeton, was an epithet of Helios. So let's look at this word Phaeton or Python. It turns into the word Python. Python, Python, Phaeton, Phaeton, a fabled serpent, the fabled serpent. Now, must look at everything from an energetic level. This all connects back to the biblical narrative. Slain by Apollo near Delphi. The serpent slain by Apollo. It means, Pythian means to rot. Remember, negredo, that is the purpose of this alchemical process, to allow something to putrefy or to rot or to decompose. This is all different symbols, but all referring to the same thing. And it's from this word meaning hollow, deep, bottom, depths. We had to reach the depths in order to rise again. The serpent had to fall asleep, had to become dormant. The serpent, representative of our energetic source, the Kundalini energy, that activating energy that is within us, that is said to lie sleeping, where? At the base of the spine, in the tailbone, at the bottom, in the depths, and used in reference to the monsters who inhabit them. Okay, so the Pythoness refers to a woman with the power of soothsaying. She has the power of this language, like Isis, the clever-tongued goddess whose words never fail. All right, it's talking about this ability whose speech never fails, more powerful than 1,000 soldiers. And when you look at the serpent from a physical standpoint, a snake or a serpent, his tongue is always darting out of his mouth. And it is a double or forked tongue, two-edged. Are you all with me? So this is why this particular metaphor, this particular symbol is used, but it's just talking about our power when we are activated. From the Latin, Pythonissa, used in the Vulgate of the Witch of Endor in 1 Samuel 7. 1 Samuel 7, you all. 1 Samuel 7. All of these sevens making the connection. And often treated as her proper name, literally feminine of Pitho, familiar spirit, which ultimately is connected to the title of the prophetess of the Delphic Oracle. So all talking about the same thing. Pythia, priestess of Apollo at Delphi, all connected. And it goes back to the scripture, Genesis 3:1, which is actually referring to the activation of this divine power within us all. Now, the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field. This is just referring to, family, very simply, this inner knowledge of an inner language, of this dark, compressed language that is resident in all of us. This dark, hidden, compressed language, and the ability to produce a new language that lies within all of us, lies asleep, ready to be activated within all of us. In short, this is going to be referring to your ability, my ability, to create these effective sigils, these effective, powerful sigils. And I want everyone to continue to refine your ability to create and condense that language and to create those symbols. Listen, this word serpent is translated as the word nachash from the Hebrew. Nachash. It's H5175. Nachash. All right? And it talks about, as a matter of fact, I should have had this in here, but I don't. But we're going to go ahead and look at it. This word nachash, serpent, translated as serpent, because it's going to refer directly to this language and our ability to what they refer to as soothsay. All right? Soothsay. So here we have it up. Nachash, serpent, snake, image of the serpent. And it says Nachash from 5172. All right? A snake from its ability to hiss, produce a sound or a word. All right? When you hear that hiss of a serpent and you don't see the serpent, you know to beware. Am I correct? It is speaking a language, a warning that a serpent is here. So this refers to this ability to produce and speak this hidden language. Let's go to 5172. 5172 is also Nakash, but again, it refers to this ability to practice divination, to divine, to observe signs, to learn by experience, diligently observe, practice fortune telling, take as or create an omen. All right? This is directly referring to activating this supernatural or ability or divine ability that resides in us all. So I'll just plug this in right here. To practice divination. Nakash, a primitive root, properly to hiss, that is, whisper a magic spell. to whisper a magic spell, generally in general to prognosticate. In other words, prognostication meaning to say you're going to produce something and then produce it. You are the one that does it. It is your ability. We used to think that it was the ability of God or the Spirit of God within us and all that religious talk. But it is our ability to what? To activate that ability to prognosticate, to say what is going to be before it comes into being. To say what is going to be before it actually comes into being. And this is going to be achieved, family, by virtue initially of these sigils, which are going to help us to activate this inner divine power that what? Hides and sleeps, resides, dwells in darkness, in the very innermost parts of us. Again, death and life in the power of the tongue. And he hath made my mouth like a sharp sword. We talked about this term, evocation, before. So we have to move God from out of the heaven up in the clouds somewhere and move him. And many of us have done this, but again, the mental aspect of moving divinity within us, that it dwells within us in thick darkness, hidden, concealed, asleep. Evocation is the process of calling this divine power forth, a calling from concealment, from its dwelling place in deep darkness, in thick darkness. All right? Calling forth, rousing or arousing, and making our appeal inwardly. Evocatio was used of the Roman custom of petitioning the gods of an enemy city to abandon it and come to Rome. It also was used to translate the Platonic Greek anamnesis, a calling up of knowledge acquired in a previous state of existence. This is more like what we're talking about. We already know this language from our previous incarnations, a recollection of a prior life. Again, this stuff, we know it because it's in us. We know it because it is in us. So getting back to the magician card, which is simply a representation that our ancestors left us, that would symbolize our activating this divine magical power, supernatural power that is within us. When we would get to that point, the tarot card is an indication, a representation of that. The magician implies that the primal forces of creativity are yours if you can claim the power and act with awareness and concentration. That's why these sigils are very important, and they will aid us in strengthening that ability to act with awareness and concentration. The card is a signal to act and act now. Don't put this off, provided you understand exactly what you want and are committing to getting it, and are committed rather to getting it. This is why I advise that we held off from really getting into practicing using the sigils, because before you do it and before you do anything, the scriptures tell us to get an understanding, before doing anything. The very first thing we need to do is get an understanding. This is new to us, so we don't want to jump out there. And even if we do, we want to keep refining and perfecting our ability to create, to hide, to condense, to purify, to perfect that particular holistic language. I'm going to pause here and ask, are there any questions or comments at this point? So again, the magician implies that the primal forces of creativity are yours if you can claim your power and act with awareness and concentration. What it means by claiming your power, if you can activate this power, this divine power that lies dormant, hidden in the darkness, if you can arouse it, if you can evoke that power, if you can call it forth from its concealment, if you can arouse it, that you will have this, you will be in possession of these primal forces of creativity. And you must be able to act with awareness and concentration and focus. And what underlies that is to be able to project your intention and attention on what it is exactly that you want to create. Where attention goes, this divine, powerful energy flows once it's activated. The magician card is a signal to act and act now, provided you understand exactly what you want and are committed to getting it. So we're going to have to be tenacious as we learn and relearn the ability to create. The correlative effects of this process are action, conscious awareness, concentration, and then power. Taking action, and this is just broken down to give us a template to follow as we come into possession of this primal creative power. Doing what needs to be done, realizing your potential, making what's possible real, practicing what you preach, carrying out plans, producing magical results, and then using your talents. Acting consciously, knowing what you are doing and why, acknowledging your motivations, understanding your intentions, examining the known situation, concentration or concentrating, having singleness of purpose, being totally committed, applying the force of your will, feeling centered, setting aside distractions, focusing on your goal, experiencing power, making a strong impact, having vitality, creating miracles, becoming energized, feeling vigorous, and being creative. So I put that again simply as a template, as a primer or a primer. Now, in the past, it is evident, and we're going to begin to close here, that we possessed, even in the fall, that we possess this ability to speak things into existence very powerfully. And in the captivity, you see what is called these iron muzzles that they would affix to your head, these individuals that had this ability, that they would fix all types of contraptions to their head that would cover their mouths. Are you familiar with the spiked gag mask that slave women, so-called slave women, were required to wear for an entire generation until the native tongue was forgotten? It not only covered the mouth, but had blades in the mouth to cut with even the slightest movement of the tongue. Do you know why? According to several captains' logs, the women were said to have a power to speak enchantments that would cause slave takers to drop dead on the spot. So they silenced them and took away the language and demonized all indigenous forms of worship and ritual. Now that refers to, now see, what you were talking about to a certain extent, why they demonized all forms of soothsaying, prognostication, and all of that. That we weren't going to be allowed to hold on to that during this process of declination, during this process of devolution, during the process of the fall. It had to occur fully. It had to reach the number 7, completion. The Obeah is the magic of the secret light, with several references to acts. The Wanga is the verbal or mental correspondence of the same. This is just a different language, different terms, but it is a repetition of what we've been talking about all along. The Obeah being acts, the Wanga the words, proper to magic. The two cover the whole world of external possession. Saying it and doing it, talking the talk and walking the walk, creating exactly what you say. What I referred to it as I first began to explore this, and the very first teaching that I developed from this was called conscious, deliberate creation. Creating exactly what you say that you're going to create. Magic is the management of all we say and do, so that the effect is to change that part of our environment that dissatisfies us until it does no longer. We remold it nearer to our heart's desire. We remold it nearer to our heart's desire. I want to give you an actual historic event now where it was demonstrated and documented that a woman had this ability to protect herself based solely on her ability to speak these dark sayings, this hidden condensed language. And this is Nanny, Queen of the Maroons. Many in her community attributed Nanny's leadership skills to her Obeah powers. Queen Nanny, or Nanny, she lived from 1687 to about 1755. She's a Jamaican national hero, well known 18th century leader of the Jamaican Maroons. And understand, in the ancient past, if you didn't have these supernatural abilities, that you did not lead anyone. In the past, during the fall, if you did not possess these supernatural abilities, you couldn't call yourself a king or a queen, and you could not lead. Much of what is known about her comes from oral history, as little textual evidence exists. That's because they destroyed it. She was born into the Asante people in what is today Ghana and escaped from slavery after being transported to Jamaica. Historical documents refer to her as the rebels' old Obeah woman. Following some armed confrontations, colonial officials reached a settlement for peace. They legally granted Nanny and the people now residing with her and her heirs a certain parcel of land containing 500 acres in the parish of Portland in order for us to receive our inheritance, because it is owed to us, land and remuneration, reparations, land, and they owe us money. Somewhere in the neighborhood, as we said, just as it relates to the Washita indigenous people, 80 trillion, no, I'm sorry, 80 quadrillion dollars, 80 quadrillion dollars. So, but in order to get that, you're just not going to you're not going to be able to go with a piece of paper. You'll have to this has to be supernaturally done. You have to demonstrate the power to demand what it is that is owed you. To demand what it is that is owed you. More evidence. I had seen a black woman, slave, as I came through the house, who was cooking the dinner, and the poor creature was cruelly loaded with various kinds of iron machines. She had one particularly on her head, which locked her mouth so fast that she could scarcely speak and could not eat or drink. I was much astonished and shocked at this contrivance, which I afterwards learned was called an iron muzzle. So we're going to close there, and to connect this back now, this is where we started with this language, this new language that we are going to have to create, this dark, purified, compressed, condensed, holistic new language. And family, our ancestors have provided us with the tool and with an understanding, very simple, of this basic tool. This is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. Continue to practice on your sigils, Continue to perfect. And by perfecting, I mean to conceal them, to hide them, the statement, the concept, the the thought from yourself, and to purify. Work on purifying it, work on compressing it, work on condensing it, work on making it holistic. You have the ability to do that. I'm going to share with you all some of the ones that I did at a later date. I'm still in the process of perfecting it. But it might be a little easier to me because I do draw. I am an artist, although I haven't done it. But this is something that I love to do. It's renewed. I haven't, done art in years, but this has renewed that love of doing that and that passion of creativity in me. So I've been just perfecting these things, and I'm going to share. I'm going to eventually compile these things into a volume and share them with you. But I don't wait on me. You have the ability within you to do it. So continue to practice, continue to perfect it, continue to hide it from yourself in the darkness so that it speaks to and arouses this inner divinity within you that hides within the darkness of the subconscious. So, with that, I'm going to end.